Hello there. Welcome to SnoozeBae. I'm Millie, and I'll be guiding you tonight. Every story here is curated with intention to help the body soften, the mind slow down, and drift you to sleep gently without effort. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to my channel so these sleep stories are easy to find whenever you're ready to drift off again. Let's begin together, just the two of us, right now, in this moment. Nothing else needs your attention. Whenever you're ready, allow your body to begin settling into the surface beneath you. Feel how the mattress holds your weight. Notice how it rises slightly to meet your shoulders, your back, your hips. You don't need to hold yourself up anymore. The bed is doing that work for you now. Take a slow breath in through your nose. Allow your lungs to fill naturally, without forcing anything. And now, release it through your mouth, as if you're letting go of everything the day asked you to carry. Let's try that again. Breathing in gently, and breathing out even slower this time. Beautiful. Now bring your awareness down to your feet. Without moving them, just notice where they are. They've carried you through every step today. Allow them to know they can rest now. Feel them growing heavier, like smooth river stones settling into warm sand. Let that heaviness move upward through your ankles, through your calves, past your knees, all the way into your thighs. There's nothing you need to hold on to here. Nothing you need to brace yourself against. Your hips can soften now. Let them sink deeper into the bed. Your lower back, which has worked so hard to keep you upright all day, can finally release. Imagine your spine settling into the mattress, like it's being cradled by something warm and safe. Allow your stomach to rise and fall naturally with each breath. Your chest expands without any effort from you. Your shoulders can drop down and back, away from your ears. All that tension you didn't even realize you were carrying can melt away now. Your arms can rest wherever they feel most at ease. By your sides, on your stomach, wherever they naturally want to be. Let your hands uncurl gently. Even your fingertips can relax. Allow your neck to soften. You can gently roll your head from side to side if that feels right. Then allow it to settle into the pillow. Your jaw can unclench. Allow your teeth to part just slightly. Your tongue can rest naturally in your mouth, soft and still. The small space between your eyebrows can smooth out. Your eyelids are growing heavier now. Allow your entire face to release, like someone just whispered to you that everything is exactly as it should be. Because it is. You're safe here. You're allowed to let go. And if sleep finds you before this story ends, that's exactly what's meant to happen. Before you drift any further, if this story brings you the rest you've been searching for, I hope you'll come back and join me again tomorrow night. There will be another journey waiting for you. So just listen. Just breathe. Just rest. Now let me tell you about 3 friends who took a journey to a place that changed everything they thought they knew about themselves. And maybe somewhere in their story, you'll find a little piece of your own healing too. It was a cold Friday evening in late January when 3 childhood friends decided to meet for dinner. They hadn't seen each other in almost a year, and you know how life does that sometimes. It pulls people in different directions, carries them into different seasons, and before you know it, months have passed. But that night, something brought them back together. Jen arrived first at this small mountain cafe they used to love when they were younger. She ordered tea and sat by the window, watching the snow fall in these thick, lazy flakes that seemed to have all the time in the world. She was 32 now, teaching at an elementary school where everyone said she had the warmest smile. But lately, smiling had started to feel like work, like something she had to remember to do. She lost her younger brother in a car accident 2 years ago, and there were still some mornings when she'd wake up and forget he was gone. She'd think about calling him, about sharing something funny that happened, and then she'd remember. The grief would wash over her all over again. It came in waves like that, unpredictable, sometimes gentle, sometimes crushing. And she was so tired of pretending she was okay when she wasn't. Kyle showed up next, brushing the snow off his boots at the door. And when Jen saw him, she smiled for real this time. Kyle was 34, tall and naturally impressive in that way that made people assume he had everything figured out. But 6 months ago, he'd done something that surprised everyone, including himself. He quit his finance job. No backup plan, no safety net. He just woke up one morning and realized he couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't sit in that office. Couldn't pretend to care about quarterly reports and profit margins. So he walked away. And now he spent his days drifting, trying to figure out what he actually wanted, feeling like maybe he'd wasted years building a life that didn't actually belong to him. Lena came last, wrapped in this thick scarf that covered half her face. And when she unwrapped it, they could see she looked different, lighter somehow. She was 31 and still learning how to take up space again. She'd left a relationship 6 months earlier, one that everyone thought was perfect. Her family loved him. Her friends kept saying how lucky she was. But behind closed doors, she'd started to disappear. Her voice got quieter. Her opinions felt smaller. She stopped knowing what she actually wanted because she'd gotten so used to wanting what he wanted. And when she finally found the courage to leave, even her own family told her she was overreacting, that every relationship had problems, that she was throwing away something good. So now she was trying to trust herself again, trying to believe that what she felt was real. But the doubt followed her everywhere. They ordered food, and for a while, they did what people do when they haven't seen each other in a long time. They laughed about old memories, talked about work, about the weather, about all those safe topics that keep you from having to talk about what's actually hurting. But then, as they were finishing their meal, Kyle pulled out his phone and showed them something he'd been thinking about for weeks. It was this article about a place called Frosthaven, a small resort tucked into the mountains way up north, where hardly anyone went anymore. The article said people traveled there to heal, not just their bodies, but something deeper than that. Old wounds that wouldn't close, grief that wouldn't loosen its grip, the kind of exhaustion that sleep couldn't touch. Jen read over his shoulder and said, "This sounds too good to be true." And Lena nodded. It probably is. They sat with that for a moment. The cafe was warm around them, although it was snowing outside. And then Lena said something that changed everything. But what if it's not? They looked at each other, and in that look, everything shifted. Because sometimes you reach a point where you're willing to try anything, where even the smallest possibility of healing feels worth the risk. "Let's go," Kyle said, and his voice was steady. What's the worst that could happen? So, right there in that cafe, with a snowfall view and warm tea still in their cups, they made a plan. 2 weeks later. A long weekend. They'd take the old mountain train as far as it would go. then walk the last few miles through the forest to reach this place. They agreed to turn off their phones once they got close. No distractions, no escape routes, just the three of them and whatever healing might be waiting. The morning they left, the city was still dark. They met at the old train station just before dawn, each carrying a small backpack and a thermos of coffee that sent steam curling into the cold air. And there was something about that moment, standing on the platform in the darkness, that felt significant. Like they were leaving behind more than just the city. The train was older than any of them, with wooden benches, worn smooth by decades of travelers, and windows that fogged up from their breath. It smelled like oil and pine and time itself. And when they settled into their seats near the back, they felt the whole carriage shudder and then begin to move. As the train pulled away from the station, they watched the city lights start to fade. The buildings got smaller, the roads turned into fields, and slowly, gradually, everything outside became nothing but snow and trees, stretching endlessly in every direction. For the first hour, nobody talked much. They just watched the landscape change, sipping their coffee, letting the rhythm of the train rock them into this meditative state. There's something about train travel that does that. You know? The way it moves you forward without you having to do anything. The way it gives you this time to just be. After a few hours, Kyle pulled out his phone to check something, and then he paused. Just held it there in his hand for a moment before looking up. "Should we just turn these off now?" he asked. Jen looked over. "What do you mean?" "Our phones," Kyle said. "That article mentioned the resort asks people to disconnect completely. Maybe we should start now, get ahead of it." Lena hesitated. Her hand went to her own phone in her pocket. There was this moment where she almost said no, where the fear of being unreachable felt too big. But then she thought about how exhausting it was, being constantly available, constantly connected, constantly performing her life for people who weren't even really paying attention. "Yeah," she said. "Let's do it." One by one, they powered down their phones and tucked them deep into their bags. And the moment they did, something in the air changed. The train felt more real somehow, more present. Their breathing sounded louder. The world outside the window seemed to come into sharper focus, like they'd been watching it through a screen this whole time, and now they were finally seeing it directly. They started talking again, but it was different now. They weren't talking about work deadlines, or social media drama, or what they were planning to do next. They talked about memories, real ones, like the summers they used to spend by the lake when they were kids, when the biggest problem in the world was whether they'd have time for one more swim before dinner. Kyle told the story about how he broke his arm trying to climb the old oak tree in Jen's backyard, trying to impress them, and they all laughed, remembering how he'd tried so hard not to cry. Lena brought up her poetry phase in high school, those terrible, dramatic poems she used to write and actually read out loud, and she laughed at herself in a way she couldn't have a year ago. And then Jen started talking about her brother, about how much he would have loved this adventure, how he was always the spontaneous one, the one who wanted to try everything, see everything, feel everything. And as she talked, her voice didn't break the way it usually did. It was steady. Sad, yes, but steady. The train carried them north for hours, through tunnels that swallowed them in darkness before spitting them back out into light, over bridges that hung above frozen rivers, past forests so thick and ancient that the trees looked black against the white snow, and with every mile they felt something loosening inside them, like they were traveling away from their pain, even though they knew they were carrying it with them. Eventually, the train began to slow. It pulled into this tiny station that was barely more than a wooden platform in the middle of nowhere. The conductor appeared, this older man with kind eyes and a gentle way of moving. And he said, "End of the line, friends. Frosthaven's about 3 miles that way." And he pointed toward a narrow path that disappeared into the trees. They stepped off the train into snow that came up past their ankles. The air was so cold it hurt to breathe at first, stinging their lungs. But it smelled incredible, like pine and ice and something ancient, something that had been there long before them and would be there long after. The train pulled away slowly, and they stood there watching it go until it disappeared around a bend. And then it was just the 3 of them, alone in this vast white forest. "Ready?" Kyle asked, and there was something in his voice. Not fear exactly, maybe anticipation. Jen adjusted her backpack and took a deep breath of that sharp, clean air. Ready as I'll ever be, and they started walking. The path was narrow but clear, like many feet had traveled it before theirs. Snow clung to the branches overhead, making the whole forest glow with a soft blue light, even though the sun was hidden somewhere behind the clouds. Everything felt hushed, almost sacred. They walked mostly in silence, not because they had nothing to say, but because the forest itself seemed to be asking them to listen, to notice, to just be present with what was around them. Jen found herself thinking about her brother as she walked, how he used to love winter more than any other season, how he'd spend hours making elaborate snow forts and then destroy them just to build something new, how he'd make hot chocolate with way too many marshmallows and tease her for always being too serious. She missed him so much it felt like a physical weight sometimes, like she was carrying him on her back. But walking through this quiet forest, breathing this clean air, the weight felt different. Still there, but somehow lighter. More like love and less like drowning. Kyle focused on his breathing as he walked. In and out, matching his steps to his breath. He'd spent so many years moving fast, chasing the next promotion, the next milestone, the next achievement that was supposed to finally make him feel successful, make him feel like enough. But none of it had worked. The promotions came and went. The money accumulated, and he still felt empty. Now, walking slowly through snow with nowhere urgent to be, nothing to prove, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, a small sense of peace. Lena listened to the sound of their footsteps crunching through the snow, and she realized something. For the first time in months, maybe even years, she wasn't second-guessing herself. Wasn't wondering if she was being too sensitive, too emotional, too much. She wasn't trying to make herself smaller to fit into someone else's idea of who she should be. She was just walking, just breathing, just existing in her own skin. And somehow, that felt like enough. Like maybe it had always been enough, and she'd just forgotten. After walking for what might have been an hour, maybe 2, time felt different here. They rounded a bend in the path and stopped. There it was, Frosthaven. It was smaller than they'd imagined, so much more beautiful. A cluster of dark wooden buildings with steep roofs, heavy with snow, warm golden light pouring from every window like liquid honey, smoke curling up from stone chimneys, carrying the scent of burning wood, lanterns hanging along the pathways, their flames protected by glass, casting these perfect circles of light onto the white ground. "We made it," Lena whispered, and there was wonder in her voice. They walked down the gentle hill toward the main building, and as they got closer, they could smell something baking. Bread, maybe, or cinnamon. Something that smelled like home, even though none of them had ever been here before. The front door opened before they could knock, and standing there was this older woman, wrapped in layers of soft wool. Her silver hair was pulled back in a loose braid, and her face was lined with age, but her eyes were the kindest eyes any of them had ever seen. "Welcome to Frosthaven," she said, and her voice was gentle but clear. The kind of voice that makes you feel safe immediately. "We've been expecting you." The woman's name was Ingrid, and she led them inside where it was warm and smelled like cedar and tea. The main hall had these wide wooden floors that creaked softly when you walked on them, and a massive stone fireplace where flames danced and crackled. There were comfortable chairs scattered around in small groups, and a few other guests moving quietly through the space. Some were reading, some were just staring into the fire, some were sitting in complete stillness, and there was something beautiful about that, about people giving themselves permission to just be. "You must be tired from your journey," Ingrid said, and they realized they were, though it was a good kind of tired. "Before you rest, there are 3 rituals we invite every guest to experience. They're simple, but they're important. They're what allows this place to do its work." She led them down a hallway lit by these beautiful oil lamps that cast dancing shadows on the walls. The floors creaked beneath their feet in a way that felt comforting, like the building itself was welcoming them. "The first ritual," Ingrid said, stopping at a door, "is the bath of release." She opened the door, and they stepped into a room that took their breath away. It was made almost entirely of glass, walls and ceiling, so you felt like you were standing inside a snow globe. In the center was this pool built right into the floor, fed by hot springs from deep within the mountain. Steam rose from the dark water in gentle wisps, and through the glass ceiling above, they could see snow falling silently against the night sky. "The water here is warmed by the earth itself," Ingrid explained, and there was reverence in her voice. "It's exactly body temperature. When you step in, you won't feel hot or cold. You'll just feel held. And that's when the release can begin." She gestured towards simple linen robes hanging on wooden hooks. "Take all the time you need. There's no rush here. There's never any rush. Just breathe and allow the water to hold what you've been carrying." She left them then, closing the door softly behind her. One by one, they changed into the robes and approached the pool. Jen stepped in first. The water rose around her ankles, her calves, her thighs, her waist. And Ingrid was right. She couldn't feel the temperature at all. It was like stepping into nothing, into air, into weightlessness. She waded deeper until the water reached her shoulders, and then she let herself float on her back, staring up through that glass ceiling at the falling snow. Her body started to relax in ways she didn't even know it was holding tension. Her shoulders, which she'd been carrying up near her ears for months, dropped. Her jaw, which she'd been clenching without realizing it, loosened. Her breath deepened, and as she floated there in that perfect darkness, lit only by starlight and snow, she felt the grief she'd been holding so tightly, so carefully, begin to soften its grip. It didn't disappear. She knew it wouldn't. Knew it would always be part of her now. But it loosened, spread out, became something she could carry alongside her love for her brother instead of something that was crushing her beneath its weight. Kyle entered the water next, and as it surrounded him, he closed his eyes and just focused on breathing. In through his nose, slow and steady. Out through his mouth, even slower. Long breaths that matched the gentle movement of the water. Somewhere in that rhythm, in that simplicity, something inside him shifted. That voice in his head that had been so loud for so long, the one constantly telling him he wasn't enough, that he'd failed, that he should have it all figured out by now, that he was running out of time. It started to fade, and beneath it, he heard something new, a quieter voice, kinder. It said, "You're exactly where you need to be. You're allowed to not know. You're allowed to be figuring it out." Lena was the last to enter, and she'd been nervous about it. About being vulnerable, about being seen. But as the water wrapped around her, warm and soft and accepting, she felt something she hadn't felt in so long she'd almost forgotten what it was. Safety. Pure, simple safety. She didn't have to prove anything here, didn't have to defend her choices or explain her feelings, or make herself smaller to avoid conflict. She could just exist. Just be Lena. Whole and imperfect and enough. And that realization brought tears to her eyes, but they were good tears. Healing tears. They floated together in that pool for a long time, each lost in their own quiet transformation, held by water that had held countless others before them, all carrying their own pain, all seeking the same thing. Release, understanding, peace. When Ingrid finally appeared again, she brought thick towels and soft robes and the gentlest smile. "The second ritual is ready whenever you are." She led them through the snow to a smaller building made of dark wood that radiated warmth. Inside was a traditional sauna, all smooth pine walls and benches arranged in a circle around these heated stones that glowed in the dim light. The air was warm and smelled like eucalyptus and cedar. And the moment they stepped inside, they felt something has changed. "This is the Sauna of Light," Ingrid said softly. "Here, we invite you to speak one small truth, something you've been holding inside that you're ready to forgive yourself for. You don't have to share it with anyone else. Just whisper it to yourself, to your own heart, and let the heat carry it away." She poured water over the heated stones, and steam hissed and filled the space with this thick, comforting warmth that seemed to wrap around them like an embrace. They sat together on the pine benches, and as the heat built and sweat began to bead on their skin, each of them went inside themselves, searching for that truth they'd been carrying. Jen closed her eyes and whispered so quietly only she could hear, "I forgive myself for not being able to save him, for not being there, for still being alive when he's not." Kyle pressed his palms together and spoke into the space between his hands. "I forgive myself for not having it all figured out, for quitting, for not being who everyone expected me to be." Lena let the tears come, mixing with the sweat on her face, and breathed her truth into the steam. "I forgive myself for leaving, for trusting my own feelings, for choosing myself even when everyone said I was wrong." The heat wrapped around them, and slowly, the those whispered truths felt lighter. The shame that had been attached to them, the guilt, the self-blame, it started to lift. Not completely, but enough. Enough to breathe a little easier. After the sauna, after they'd cooled down and dressed again, Ingrid showed them to their rooms. Each room was simple but beautiful. A bed with thick quilts that looked like they'd been made by hand. A window overlooking the snowy forest. A small wooden desk with a leather-bound journal and a pen resting on top. "This is the third ritual," Ingrid said, and her voice was so gentle it was almost a whisper. "The Room of Renewal. Before you sleep tonight, write in that journal. Just one page. Write what you wish to release, what you're ready to leave behind. You don't have to show it to anyone. The words are just for you, but let yourself write them down. Let them leave your body and go onto the page." She stepped back toward the door, then paused. "Healing doesn't happen all at once, you know. It happens in these small choices to let go." Then she left them, closing each door with care. Jen sat at the wooden desk in her room and stared at the blank journal for a long moment before picking up the pen. Then she started to write. About her brother. About how much she missed him. About the guilt she carried for still living her life while his had ended. About how tired she was of performing okayness for everyone around her. And as she wrote, as the words flowed from her mind through her hand onto the page, something remarkable happened. The pain didn't disappear, but it transformed. It went from this massive, shapeless thing crushing her chest to something contained. Something she could look at. Something that was part of her story, but didn't have to be the whole story. Kyle sat at his desk for a long time before he could even pick up the pen. But when he did, the words came. "I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And maybe that's okay. Maybe purpose isn't this thing you find one day, like treasure buried in the ground. Maybe it's something you build slowly, day by day, choice by choice. Maybe I'm already building it right now without even realizing it. Maybe the not knowing is part of the path." Elena wrote quickly, like the words had been waiting for years to get out. "I trust myself. I trust my feelings. I trust that leaving was the right decision, even if nobody else understands it. I don't need their validation. I don't need their approval. I am enough. I have always been enough. I choose me." When they finished writing, each of them closed their journal with a kind of ceremony, like they were closing a chapter. Then they climbed into those comfortable beds, pulled those heavy quilts up to their chins, and looked out their windows at the snow still falling endlessly, patiently, covering everything in this blanket of peace. One by one, they fell into the deepest, most restful sleep they'd had in years. Morning came softly, light streaming through the windows in gentle waves, not harsh or demanding, just present. When they woke, each of them felt different, lighter somehow, like they'd set something down during the night. They met for breakfast in the main hall, and the meal was simple but nourishing. Steel-cut oatmeal with local honey, thick slices of fresh bread with butter that tasted like it had been churned that morning, tea that smelled like herbs and flowers and healing. They didn't talk much while they ate. They didn't need to. Something had shifted in each of them, and words felt too small to capture it. So they just sat together, eating slowly, looking out the windows at the snow-covered forest, feeling grateful. Ingrid found them after breakfast, and somehow they already knew what she was going to say. "You'll be leaving today," she said, and it wasn't a question. It was just a knowing. Already? Jen asked, though part of her understood. Frosthaven doesn't work by keeping people here, Ingrid explained. It works by helping them remember what they've always had inside themselves. The strength, the wisdom, the healing. It was never about this place. It was always about you. You've remembered now, so you carry it with you. She walked them to the door where their boots and coats were waiting, and she pressed something into each of their hands. Small stones, smooth and dark, still warm like they had been sitting by the fire. For the moments when you forget, she said with the kindest smile. When the world gets loud again and you can't hear yourself think. Hold the stone. Remember this feeling. Remember that you can always find your way back to it. They walked back through the forest, and the path that had seemed so uncertain on the way in now felt familiar. The weight they'd been carrying felt different now. Not gone. They understood it would probably never be completely gone, but manageable, like something they could live with instead of something they were dying from. The train was waiting at the station, exactly as they'd left it, as if no time had passed at all. As they boarded and found their seats, and the train began to move, they watched Frosthaven disappear into the snow and trees, watched it fade until it looked almost like a dream, like something they might have imagined. Do you think it was real? Kyle asked, turning the smooth stone over in his hands. Lena touched her own stone in her pocket and smiled. I think it was real enough. Jen looked out at the passing landscape, at the snow-covered pines and the frozen rivers and the endless white. I don't think real is the question. I think the question is, do we feel different? And I do. So it was real where it matters. They rode the train back in this comfortable silence, each of them holding what they'd learned. That grief is just love with nowhere to go. That purpose isn't found, it's built. That trusting yourself is the single most courageous thing you can do. When they arrived back at the city station, the sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold and orange. They stood together on the platform, not yet ready to go back to their separate lives yet. Same time next year? Kyle asked. Jen smiled, and it was a real smile, the one that used to come so easily. Maybe, or maybe we just remember this. That healing doesn't mean fixing everything. It just means being willing to show up for yourself. To try. Lena nodded. And that we don't have to carry everything alone. That it's okay to ask for help. To lean on each other. They hugged then. And then they went their separate ways, back into their lives, but carrying something new with them now. Something that felt a lot like hope. And maybe this is what you needed to hear tonight too. That healing doesn't mean erasing your pain. It doesn't mean pretending you're not hurting. It means learning to hold your pain more gently. It means understanding that grief is really just love that has nowhere to go. That feeling lost is sometimes the beginning of finding out who you really are. That trusting your own truth, your own feelings, your own knowing, that's one of the most courageous things you'll ever do. You don't need to have everything figured out right now. You don't need to be completely healed before you're allowed to rest. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to be willing to try, to show up for yourself, to accept help when it's offered, to speak your truth when you're ready, to write down what's been too heavy to carry. Your pain is real. Your exhaustion is real. Your grief, your confusion, your uncertainty. All of it is real and valid and yours, and you deserve to rest now. So feel the surface beneath you. Notice how it's holding your full weight. You don't have to hold yourself up anymore. You can let go. You can surrender to this moment. Allow your breath to slow down even more now. Breathe in slowly through your nose, letting the air fill your lungs naturally, and breathe out even more slowly through your mouth, releasing everything you've been holding, everything that doesn't serve you anymore. Allow your mind to stop working so hard. Stop trying to fix everything. Stop planning for tomorrow. Stop replaying today. Just be here, right now, in this moment, with this breath. Imagine that warm water surrounding you now, holding you, supporting you without you having to do anything at all. Just floating, just being held. Imagine that heat wrapping around all the places you've been holding tension. Your shoulders, your jaw, your chest, your mind. Feel it softening everything. Imagine writing down everything you've been carrying that's not yours to carry anymore. Everything you're ready to release. And watching those words lift off the page and float away. You're safe here in this moment. You're held. You're allowed to let go of everything for just a while. Somewhere above you, stars are shining endless. The world is settling into stillness. And you can finally rest. You've earned this. You've worked so hard. You've carried so much. And tonight, you can just breathe and drift and let sleep find you. Because healing happens in moments like this. In the surrender. In the rest. And you're resting now. Deeply. Safely. Completely. Sleep well, friend. You're exactly where you need to be.